Hello, I'm Kai Rosga and welcome to Version Up, one lawyer's journey to digitally transform his legal practice. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode and find some useful tidbits for deploying technology in your legal practice, but please don't take anything I say too seriously. This is not my day job, and the views expressed here are mine and not my employer's. On this episode, I want to share some impressions from attending LegalWeek 2025 and browsing the vendor booths at the event. LegalWeek is an annual conference of technology vendors, providers, and professionals who service the legal compliance and risk sectors. This year it was in New York City, my backyard, so I was excited to attend. It's a huge conference, a lot of attendees, and several massive exhibition halls of vendor booths. And I wanted to share with you all two things that I gathered from my time at the conference. The first is to share my impressions about the state of legal tech generally. This is to pick up on a topic from the first episode and just sort of keep you up to date on how the industry is doing, the impressions I get from tracking it, all because I think it's just helpful intel for you as you're thinking about whether or not to deploy some of these tools in your practice. The other thing I wanted to cover today was to share some thoughts on specific types of products that I saw at the event, things that I've been tracking for a while now and had a chance to check in with a few vendors and just wanted to share my thoughts. So let's jump in. Let's start with sort of my big picture impressions. So it was a splashy event. It made a strong impression on me, just in terms of the energy and the amount of excitement that seemed to be generated in this sector right now. And it felt like that one of the goals of the conference was to show the robustness of legal tech. I think mission accomplished. But at the same time, it felt a bit frenzied, bit of a gold rush kind of feel to it. It kind of tracked my general impression about legal tech, which is that we are early in the growth phase of this sector. If you're thinking about getting plugged in and starting to follow this on a more regular basis, it's a great time because we are certainly not anywhere past the initial phase of growth, and that's exciting to be a part of. And I think it also means that there are a lot of opportunities for being on the frontier of deploying these tools. So at the same time, I want to acknowledge, of course, that being sort of on the frontier comes with some risks and perils. I'll be sure to talk about that in full, as well as the opportunities. At the same time, there's also the risk of being left behind. But I think at this time, that risk is low, meaning if you're just starting to think about legal tech for your legal practice, you are probably in the minority of people, frankly, of lawyers or practicing lawyers. And so what that means is, if you have not a lot of time to devote to this at the moment, don't worry about it. I think if you pick this back up in 3 months, 6 months, there won't be a huge tidal wave yet. But at the same time, if you are, like me, excited about sort of being an early adopter of some of these things, this is a great time to be plugged in. So there were a lot of vendors present at this conference. By my count, I'd say somewhere close to 200. And for me as a user, as a sort of casual observer, quite challenging to navigate the halls. To me, that there's a bit of a double-edged sword to the fact that there are so many options out there. It's nice to have the right variety, but a lot of similar offerings, meaning while having a lot of vendors means there's a lot of different ideas out there, a lot of different use cases being explored, a lot of different features being put out. At the same time, there's a lot of overlap, and it can be hard to figure that out. And so the field, in my view, is extremely fragmented. It can be quite difficult to tell the signal from the noise. So as I browse the booths, as I talk to vendors, in some ways it's quite similar experience to searching for these things online, which is there's a bit of a fog that you go through where the more you browse and the more you look at these products, the less clear it is to you what makes them stand out, and what's different about them, and what exactly is behind some of the marketing and frankly hype. And so I certainly experienced this again, as a casual user, walking the booths, sort of a flattening effect over time of sort of getting the sense that you're kind of going through the same experience from booth to booth. But that's not the case, right? And I think that's the important takeaway is that's the impression you might get. It's the same impression you might get when you are online and just scrolling around, maybe searching on the web and just looking at products. That feeling, that kind of fog that you get, I think it's normal to have, but it's a bit of the result of inexperience on the user's part, lack of familiarity, as well as just the fact that there's so many vendors that it's really tough for any one of them to rise above the rest and really stand out. So what do you do with this, right? How do you navigate this kind of situation? And how do you distinguish one tool from another? Well, to me, the thing that distinguishes the tools that are really worth exploring is whether they are solving a real pain point in my legal practice. And so I really need it to be targeted on a specific challenge that I'm facing day to day in my practice that is supported or sort of eliminated by the tool. And so one way to go about that is to really sort of define the negative space. And what I mean by that is, take all the products that have unclear value add, the products that seem to have features in search of a problem, and products that might look cool and might be nice to have. You take all that and you just put it aside. It's just not worth your time. You can't go down the rabbit hole and start looking at every neat looking product. You really have to have a more measured approach. And so once you've kind of defined that negative space and you've taken all those out of the mix, what's left? To me, the ultimate question is, do I need this tool to keep up? Will I be able to show my stakeholders that this is something worth using, that there's a value to it? And if the answer to that is no, then I can quickly move on. The best way to approach sort of looking for these solutions is not to just sort of browse the market without a goal or purpose and just sort of browsing and wandering from product to product and seeing what you like and what you don't like. That is going to, I think, A, be overwhelming, and two, will not be very effective. In my view, and I think this is consistent with what you'll hear from consultants and other people who advise on these issues, is that the right way to go about surveying the market is not browsing product to product and absorbing features that you like and then sort of trying to think about how it might work in your practice. That's not the right way to do it. That's going to get you lost pretty quickly. The right way to do it is to really take a from the ground up approach where you look at your practice, you identify the pain points that you experience in your practice day to day, and then you go on a discovery journey for a product that addresses those needs. And so you're really kind of building it up from the ground up. You're identifying your needs and then you're figuring out which products meet those needs. And you'll find that that's a more effective way to match with a product that actually adds value as opposed to the sort of more kind of meandering approach that I think a lot of us are tempted to take if we're not experienced in deploying technology, if we don't have a good legal operations support team, et cetera. And so that to me is the main sort of takeaway for how you navigate a fragmented field like this is you really need to be methodical about it. The other takeaway for me from this highly fragmented state is that there's a tremendous benefit of focusing on, from the vendor's perspective, I think there's a big benefit of focusing on a niche market versus trying to be any sort of all-in-one tool. And that's a tip for the vendors. I don't think it's anything technologists haven't heard or thought about, but maybe the way people have not thought about it before is that it's also a shortcut for those of us trying to think about which tools to deploy. Meaning, I think if you think about the ideal tool as being something very specific and niche, I think that actually helps you in having a realistic expectation for what's out there and helps you in having the right kind of approach to find that product, as opposed to trying to go about looking for some sort of perfect solution that's going to capture six, seven, eight things that you might be wanting to have. So, what's the root challenge that the vendors have to overcome, and what is the main challenge that we as legal practitioners have to overcome in thinking about deploying legal tech? To me, it's if you're asking me to spend time, money, and goodwill that I have built up with my colleagues or my leadership, there needs to be a very clear value proposition waiting for me on the other side. And so a fragmented market like the one we have makes this especially difficult. And so I think it really puts a premium on thinking carefully and being methodical about how you approach the discovery or search process. The third big picture impression I got about the state of legal tech from the conference is not going to be a surprise. It's AI. Lots and lots and lots of AI. It's in the name of vendors, it's in their slogans, mottos, it's in their marketing material, it's everywhere. And you get this sense when you browse the internet or you browse websites, etc. But when you're in the room and you're walking from booth to booth, and you see all the marketing materials, the branding that's up, and it really gives you an impression. For me, the sort of absolute ubiquity of AI was really notable, and in some ways was a little bit concerning, especially from the perspective of a user like myself. What does AI mean? I'm not a technologist, but I do know that a lot of these tools that have been available to lawyers for 5, 10 years, a lot of them already have been powered with machine learning, AI for a while. So what is new now that makes it so notable that it should be the absolute focus of people's efforts to sell their products? And I can't give a technical answer to that, but let me give you a perspective from a user or customer. And to me, the main driver of this sort of AI driven buzz is generative AI. It's the availability of a chatbot user interface. It doesn't have to be a chatbot, but most often it is something that the user can easily talk to and engage with by chatting with it. And it's generative, meaning it generates content. It can generate documents, so it can write things for you. It can generate images. It could generate, for example, charts for your analytics. And it also conducts analysis, summaries, comparisons, etc. And so in some ways, it kind of thinks like a lawyer does as well. And so to me, those are some of the features that I see when I'm looking at products that have generative AI. And so I think that, in my view, is the main driver of why this is the moment where AI has really taken such a prominent position in the way that this industry is positioning itself. So the takeaway for me on this topic is I try not to get caught up on whether a tool has AI or whether it's marketed with AI. I try to focus on whether it addresses a need that I have. That's the key is not what is under the hood, because frankly, as a lawyer, I don't know that I care so much what's under the hood. And now I might care if it makes me doubt the effectiveness of the product or the accuracy of the results. But if we put that aside, if the tool is accurate, if it's doing what it tells me it's going to do, if it's good at it, then I want to know simply, is it addressing a need that I have? And whether that need is addressed because of AI or some other, magic formula, it doesn't really matter to me. And this is critical, I think. In our day-to-day work, no lawyer is judged on whether we use a particular technology to do our work. So whether I take my notes pen and paper, whether I use OneNote with the suite, or whether I use some sort of, maybe some fancy voice recognition tool, no one cares. What lawyers are judged by is outcomes. Their outcomes as advisors. They're judged on the accuracy, the relevance, the timeliness, the cost efficiency of their advice. And so AI may help, with some, maybe it helps with marketing and getting attention to a product. It may even help internally when you're trying to sell deploying a product if you know that your stakeholders or audience are particularly interested in AI. But beyond that, it's not it really as relevant as whether the tool does those things and whether it actually achieves results that are aligned with the way that I am judged as a lawyer day to day. Now I'll move on to the second topic I wanted to cover today, which is what are some specific tools that I saw at the conference that uh, I want to share with you. And I guess I'm not going to call out any by name, but I will kind of walk through a few of the things that I've been curious about and following and got a chance to check in on at the conference. And before I do that, I guess one big picture observation I wanted to share is, and again, this is a reflection of just how the early stage we are in this sector's growth, is that a lot changes every 6 months or 9 months. If you were to only check in on the state of legal tech every 6 months and ignore it for the other rest of the 5 months and 30 days, you would see a lot of change. You would see, even within one vendor, features get added, features get dropped. Vendors might pivot entirely. They might be focused on one vertical, like in-house, and they might be focused on a different. Some startups will fail. Some startups will get acquired. So, that's that can be kind of a chaotic, frankly, a bit scary thing to do to navigate if you're thinking about deploying these tools. And it also means that you can't count on a snapshot every 3 months or 6 months to really give you an idea of where the market is today. And so to me, this is a reflection, this is the reality, but it also reflects one of the risks of deploying too much too soon and really the possibility of overpromising when you're selling this internally to your stakeholders. Because you may have a great tool. You might think that it's going to be really land with a big splash, be really effective. But, what if that tool is not exactly the same thing that you thought it was 6 months later when you've actually deployed it? So I think you have to be mindful of that, and you have to be very smart in how you look at, the different software programs that you're going to encounter as you browse this space. So a few things that were standouts for me. I've been curious in the notion of a legal AI assistant. The idea is basically a tool that often has generative AI, has a chatbot interface that can really act as, let's say, a senior paralegal or a junior attorney in a way, where they can do first drafts, they can do initial analysis, they can do initial research, etc. Being able to automate that and do it with a chatbot interface where you can really sort of use natural plain language to give instructions, just like you would sitting down in a meeting with a junior attorney. The way that you'll see these marketed is that the models underlying the AI are trained to think and write like a lawyer. And so the vendors will claim, and this sort of remains to be, I think, tested in real time, and you have to demo these products, but they will claim that if you compare the output that these legal AI assistants give you to some of the off-the-shelf sort of general chatbots, that it just will look and sound and have the right tone that you would expect from a legal professional, as opposed to something that's maybe a little more broad-based and mainstream. So that's the first sort of feature that you'll see being marketed for the legal AI assistants. The other is that it's really trained on a corpus of legal documents. So as opposed to your general off-the-shelf chatbot, which uses the entire World Wide Web, these legal AI assistants will be trained on specific databases or bodies of materials that are legal documents. And so that's what allows these tools to give more tailored legal analysis, as opposed to a tool that can not only maybe do a little bit of legal analysis, like help you think about what are the main things to flag when you're thinking about purchasing real estate for your contract, but it also help you, with recipes. um, these tools are really focused on giving sophisticated legal advice, and so you'll see two different kinds of legal AI assistants out there. At least this is how I categorize them. There are the legacy legal database service providers. These are the big sort of incumbents that have been around for many, many years. They've been around since the initial digitization of case law, of legal documents that are in the public record. Over time, these legacy providers have added news and articles. They've added practical guidance materials. And that's the sort of body of legal documents, or the universe of legal materials that those models will access when you ask questions, when you engage with the chatbot. So that's the first category. The other category are more of the sort of startups, which don't have that sort of large corpus of legal documents. Some of them, by the way, might have access to those documents as a result of commercial arrangements with the incumbent legal service providers. So essentially allowing the startup to access that powerful database of legal documents. But a lot of them don't, and there's a bit of a black box in terms of what is the source of material that these startups are using to provide legal analysis. And so that black box can be a good thing. It can be an opportunity because those startups may be thinking of very unique, clever ways to find valuable legal information in the public space that maybe the legacy legal database providers have not. But it can be a little scary too, because if you ask the vendors, well, what is the legal corpus? They kind of can't really give you specifics or they won't. And so that can be nerve-wracking because then that sends few warning signs off in my head about what is going to be the accuracy of this product and the results it gives me. But the the advantage of the startups is that they, in my view, are more advanced in terms of thinking about unique features. They are more nimble and they just are quicker to roll things out. And so you have to weigh and balance those considerations, but it's not going to be that either of these tools is going to be perfect all around. There's going to be strengths and weaknesses to each one of them. And putting aside the ability to access this sort of large universe of legal documents, one of the but maybe even bigger payoffs, in my view, of these legal AI assistants is not in accessing, case law or even the powerful practical guidance notes that some of these legacy providers have, or maybe, SEC materials like contracts that are disclosed as part of the securities regulations process. That's nice, but to me, one of the bigger payoffs is actually the ability to use and leverage your own data, meaning if you're in-house, for example, it might be your internal policies, it might be your internal guidance notes, your internal code of conduct. It could be templates that you use for supporting the business on specific commercial transactions. It can be playbooks that you've developed for advising the business on particular matters and issues. That internal data is can be very powerful and it can be quite difficult to navigate if you're at a large organization. And so the potential to have a legal AI assistant that can tap into that data and quickly access it and summarize it, contextualize it, that to me is actually really interesting and potentially very helpful in my practice. And by the way, means that that black box problem is maybe not as big of an issue. And again, this goes back to what I said earlier about you have to identify your pain points and then find tools that address those pain points. If your pain point is, I'm overwhelmed by the internal universe of information and documents at my company, well then, that pain point will be addressed by something different than if your pain point is, I need to keep track of legal developments really quickly and efficiently for a large, complex organization, and I need to know that the legal AI assistant is plugged into the most comprehensive and up-to-date legal database out there. So you really got to, again, you got to know what you're looking for. So that was the legal AI assistant. One other one that I am following closely are matter management tools. Sometimes these are called case management tools. The idea is these are software programs that essentially do project management. They allow you to track the cases that you do, the advisory work you do, the litigations you do, the M&A you do, whatever it is that comprises your matters. The matter management tools help you input those, track them. That comes with several big benefits. One is just being able to see the progress of cases, see what's open, see what's closed, see how quickly things are being opened and closed, reallocate resources to maybe help team members who are struggling to close their cases. That's one benefit. That's sort of, to me, the project management side. The other part of it is the intake side. Here, the intake part of management tools is the idea that to open a matter, whether it's you, the lawyer, opening the matter because you've been asked a question by the business, or whether it's the business wanting to open up their own matter to sort of streamline the process for them to get to a lawyer, to get to the support they need. Matter management tools are there to also help with that process and give people a quick way to input the data, open the matter quickly, and move on. The other benefit of matter management tools is that they provide dashboards and reporting, meaning to the extent that you've been diligent at tracking your matters and inputting them into the matter management platform, there will be built-in dashboards and other neat features that allow you to look at and track the performance of your group. You can see how many cases are open. You can see how quickly they're being closed, or what substantive issues they're raising, and increasingly beyond sort of a simple dashboard, we're seeing some instances of more advanced data analytics being offered as part of matter management tools. And so, you could see a steady state where matter management tools allow you to really do some detailed risk assessment, looking around the corner, trying to identify gaps in your compliance program, and get other really interesting insights that traditionally would have been done in a more sort of gut feel kind of intuitive way. The last thing that I look for as I navigate the matter management tool space, and there are quite a few of these products available, and many of them are tailored to outside counsel. Several of them are tailored to in-house counsel, but there's many of them out there. And one thing that I look for is whether the user interface is really easy. Whether it's opening a matter, it needs to be as few clicks as possible. I think, especially if you're talking about the business, your sort of clients, if they're the ones expected to use an intake capability, or even if it's your legal team, people are busy. People have a way of doing things already. And anytime you introduce a new way to do something they're already doing, you need to make sure that you're making it as seamless and easy as possible. And if you don't, I think the risk is that the adoption will be low, that you will deploy one of these products and then you'll find out that no one's using them. And the reason will be that it's just too cumbersome. The last category of tools that I wanted to flag is related to matter management, and it's a subset, or it's often a feature of a matter management tool, but it can also be a standalone tool as well, which is intake or help desk tools. Here, again, the idea for an intake tool is you're making it as easy and seamless as possible for someone to find the subject matter expert or the support that they need to be able to answer the question they have. So whether it's a client, whether it's a business unit, business team in-house, you have someone that has a legal need. They may not even know what that legal need is. They just know that big picture, they know they need it to be run by legal, or they may have some idea, they may have issue spotted some specific area that they need support on. And now they're faced with this dilemma of finding the right person to answer that question. And so, as I'm sure many of us, especially those that have been in-house, know, the journey that a business person goes from question to answer can be quite difficult, depending on how an organization is set up. There could be an initial outreach to a business embedded lawyer. That lawyer may be more of a generalist who then refers the business person to a subject matter expert, such as myself. And then, maybe I realize that I'm not the right person to answer the question, or I realize that someone else needs to be looped in. And so you have this multiple step process. If you're spread across the world, you have time zone differences. And so you might lose 6 hours, half a day, an entire day, just sort of bouncing around. And eventually that person gets to an expert who helps them, but maybe they've lost a day or two in the process. That's a problem. It can be a problem because some questions are time sensitive. And as lawyers, we always are trying to be as quick as possible in providing our support to the business. We're aware of the fact that we don't want to be a bottleneck. We want to be someone that's moving things along and facilitating a good business outcome. And so anything that streamlines that process is potentially a huge benefit to an organization. And intake tools come in different sort of layers of complexity, but some are as simple as a person being able to use their instant messaging platform internally or using an email to a general help desk line and quickly be thrown into a setup for a matter intake. But it could also be something a little more complicated. This is what I call the sort of help desk or support desk feature that you'll see in these intake tools. And there, the idea is that when a person engages with this intake process or engages with the help desk, they are interacting with a funnel that will provide a quick answer, like a chatbot interface where the business person asks their question, and maybe it's a very straightforward question with a very straightforward answer, and you've set up the help desk to provide that answer. Something like, do I need an NDA? Or if it's more complex, then maybe the chatbot points the person to internal guidance materials that the user can then rely on for self-help. Or if those two fail, then you provide contact information to an expert who can help support them on the question they have. And so in that way, the intake or help desk really acts as sort of a digital operator, right? That figures out quickly how to get the person to the answer that they need. To me, there's a lot of exciting tools out there, and those are just three that I wanted to mention, which are legal AI assistant tools, matter management platforms, intake or help desk offerings. Those are probably most relevant to my practice, but I do want to mention a few other items that I saw browsing the booths that just sort of jumped out. Some really interesting stuff out there. I saw a AI-powered witness analysis tool, the ability to record video of a witness during a prep and do facial recognition and other things like that to help provide really powerful feedback that can help inform how you can prepare a witness. I saw some interesting things surrounding leveraging data to streamline arbitration or settlement procedures, trying to take those out of extensive, time horizons and extremely costly proceedings and try to streamline the ability of two parties in a dispute to reach a resolution quickly and efficiently using, data and AI-powered analytics. I saw some interesting litigation analytics platforms that looked at judicial decisions and try to provide some really powerful insights about the court that you're in or the judge that's hearing your case. There's just a few examples, really not something that, maybe would have been part of my practice in the past, but is not my current focus. But to me, the common thread of those was these are tools that are really filling a niche need. And to go back to my earlier point, this is really where you can stand out as a vendor and also where you can help yourself as a user looking for tools is if you just really think about what are your specific needs and you try to find very specific tools to address those needs, I think you'll find this to be an easier process than just sort of going out and browsing for technology without a clear aim or purpose. And the ability to have sort of a niche offering is, to me, the opposite of that flattening effect that I was talking about, which is as I'm browsing these booths, the vendors start looking very similar one to one. And then what really jumps out is when someone has one of these sort of very tailored, very specific tools. I think it's a very effective way to stand out in a very noisy crowd. This week, I'll be at the ABA Antitrust Spring Meeting in DC. It's more of a legal conference, but I'll be interested to see if technology continues to be a part of the discussion about compliance, legal operations, and other legal functions. Last year, I moderated a panel on legal tech tools for compliance, and I'll be speaking this year on a panel on compliance, and I'm sure technology will come up. It's not the focus of the panel, but I'm sure it'll come up. So I'll report back on that. I'm looking forward to seeing if the trend continues that I've noticed, which is that even at legal conferences, we start seeing legal tech coming up more and more. Thank you for listening to this episode of Version Up. If you have comments or questions, you can reach me at kairozga@gmail.com. This podcast has been bootstrapped by me, Kai Rozga, with music by Brett Ryback.